It may be winter time, but please don't put away your canners. This is the perfect time to stuff your cabinets full of your winter staples. And what I mean by winter staples, you can make your canned meats, your canned soup, your canned sauces, your spaghetti sauce, chickpeas, chutney. What do you mean chutney? That's made from fresh summer vegetables. But you can take your frozen rhubarb and make your favorite chutney. You can take your frozen strawberries and make your favorite jam. So you don't have to put your canner away in the winter. It's time to stuff your pantry. So in the spirit of stuffing my pantry, I am going to be making today a maple bourbon baked bean recipe. Imagine delicious maple bourbon baked beans with a huge thick slice of your sourdough bread with butter on top. Delicious. I just want to make one note for this recipe. Now, I am not a rebel canner at all. I always try to stick by the book. But most of the ingredients that I'm using are ingredients that are either already in a baked bean recipe made for canning or that I know are safe for canning. So except for the maple syrup and the bourbon, the rest are in your typical baked bean canning recipes. Spices are something that you can always add or leave out. So that's not a big deal. So all that to say, you're not going to find this very specific recipe in a canning book. I did tweak it a tiny little bit. But I mean, look at all these beautiful ingredients that are going into these beans. Maple syrup, bourbon, brown sugar, salt, pepper, molasses, apple cider vinegar, mustard, salt, Worcestershire sauce, if I said that correctly. These are going to be delicious. The first thing that we need to do is to prepare our beans. Depending on where you look, they have different recommendations on how to prepare your beans for canning. Some say to soak overnight, some say don't soak overnight. So anyway, I did all of the above. Hopefully they'll turn out well. So I started by putting my beans to soak last night in water. You need to put a lot of water because they do soak up a lot. Once the beans are soaked in water and rehydrated, the next step is to bring them to a boil. So you need to bring them to a boil and let them boil for 2 minutes. Once that 2 minutes is up, you're going to turn off the heat, take them off the heat, and let them soak again for another hour. Once your beans have soaked for 1 hour, you're going to drain them once again. Add plenty of water to your beans, and we need to bring them back to a boil. Make sure you've added enough water to your beans because we're going to need 2 to 3 cups of this liquid for the sauce. You just need to bring them back up to a boil at this point. So what we're going to be doing now is taking all these ingredients and making our sauce. So let's go. Just remember that all the ingredients and all the steps to making these beans are going to be listed in the description below in case you missed something. So to your saucepan, you are going to be adding Theresa from the future here. Just wanted to let you know, after I finished my beans, I had some company come over and we were making a dip and ketchup was needed for the dip. And as I'm looking for the ketchup in my fridge, I thought, there was ketchup in that recipe. I completely forgot, and it's not just a little bit of ketchup, it's like 2 cups of ketchup. So don't do like I did. Don't forget the ketchup. Add the ketchup to your beans. I'm sure they're still delicious, but I just want to let you know I forgot to put the ketchup in my beans. Now back to our regular scheduled program. Put 2 cups of the reserved liquid from the beans to start with, and then I'll see later if I need more. I am going to be adding the 1/4 cup of apple cider vinegar, 1/4 cup of molasses, 1 cup of packed brown sugar, 1 cup of delicious bourbon, 1 cup of maple syrup, 2 tablespoons of salt, 1 tablespoon of pepper, 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce, 1 or 2 tablespoons of paprika, and 1 or 2 tablespoons of dry mustard. I'm going to give this a stir, and we're just going to bring it to the stove top to bring this all to a boil to make sure everything gets well incorporated. I am bringing this to a boil, and on the other burner I have my canner, my pressure canner, starting to warm up. Once your sauce is well heated, the steam is going in my face, it's time to fill our jars. Something I didn't mention is that if you wanted to, you can add a little bit of meat to your jars. The recommendation is a 3/4 inch cube per jar, so it's really not that much. Bacon, ham, or pork. So it's not a huge quantity, so for that little amount, I'm not going to bother putting any meat in my jar, but you can if you wanted to add a little bit more. As usual, everything is hot. So we have our hot jars that we're going to fill with our hot beans, and then the sauce over top is also hot. So we want to start by filling our jar with the beans. So somewhere around 2/3 to 3/4 full of the beans. You don't want to overfill your jar because you need to leave a generous amount of space for the liquid because the beans are still going to absorb a lot of liquid and you don't want your bottles to run dry. Once you've added your beans, you can add your liquid. You need to leave 1 inch head space. So you're going to backfill your jar until you're left with 1 inch head space. You want to remove any bubbles that can be hiding inside the jar. I don't have any meat, but because this is really sticky, a lot of sugars in there, I'm going to clean the rim with vinegar just to make sure that I get a good seal. You're going to add, as usual, a new cap. You no longer need to boil those caps, but they do need to be washed and new. And then your ring fingertip tight, and then transfer this over to your canner. Then proceed filling all your jars. I have ended up with 6 jars of beans. A little tip, if you decide to try this, I was running out of liquid, so the last couple of bottles, I only added half of the jar with liquid, like the sauce, and the rest of the jar I kind of backfilled with the liquid that the beans had boiled in. So either add an extra cup of liquid from the start if you don't want to dilute your sauce too much, or you can do 1.5 times the sauce to put in your beans. I have some leftover beans even with that, and I'm going to put them in my slow cooker and probably they'll be ready for supper. So I will have beans for supper. So now what we need to do is, they're all in my pressure canner. So we're going to add the lid, as usual, just do a quick inspection, make sure all parts are moving. We're going to seal the canner with the cover. We're going to turn the heat up and we're going to start heating our jars. So the button has popped, or raised, not really popped. And so we're going to time our canner now for 10 minutes. This is venting the pot. So we vent for 10 minutes. Our pot has vented for 10 minutes. Now we're going to add the weighted gauge and start building the pressure. My pot is at 11 pounds of pressure. It's now time to start lowering the heat. So we want to keep the heat at 11 pounds of pressure. We need to can this for 80 minutes. There's conflicting times on how long they need to be canned for. But 80 minutes is the longer processing time for pint-sized jars, so I'm not going to take a chance and I'm going to do 80 minutes. So we need to keep an eye on our gauge. It's a little high. I need to lower the heat a little bit more and keep it at 11 pounds of pressure. And now we can start timing as soon as we've hit our target pounds for pressure. Time is up. So now we turn off the heat, and if your canner's not too heavy, we're going to transfer it over to the cool side of the stove top. If it's too heavy for you to handle, just leave it where it is. It'll just take a little bit longer to cool down. So now we need to leave this there to cool down. The dial is going to drop and go down to 0, and this button is going to fall. We need to let these things happen on their own. Don't force it. Just be patient and let it happen. The button has dropped. The dial has gone down to 0. I'm going to remove the weighted gauge, and now we have to wait another 10 minutes before we can remove the cover. We're getting there. 10 minutes are up. Let's take the cover off. Flip the cover away from your face because there's still a lot of steam and heat in there and you wouldn't want to burn yourself, so always flip it away from your face. And just let it rest again in your pot before taking them out for another 5-10 minutes. I have 6 perfect jars of maple bourbon baked beans, to be more precise. Remember, you have to leave them untouched or wherever you took them out of your pot and place them for 12 to 24 hours. You want them to settle, you want them to seal properly. Once that time is up, be sure to remove the ring. Don't store them with the rings on top. It could create a false seal and lead to an unsafe product. You can keep your beans stored in a cool, dry, dark environment. They'll last there easily for up to a year, even longer. I hope I've inspired you to not put your canner away just because it's winter time. It's time to explore, try new things. So I do hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you like my content. If you do, don't be shy, subscribe, give it a big thumbs up, and be sure to check back again soon to see what other content I will have coming out.